You probably believe that once you lock your front door, you are safe, that the four walls of your home are a fortress against the darkness outside, a place where nothing can touch you. But have you ever heard a floorboard creak when you're supposed to be alone? Or felt that sudden chilling paranoia that makes you double-check a lock you know you already secured? It's the terrifying doubt that whispers your sanctuary might already be breached. The stories you are about to hear explore what happens when that doubt becomes a reality, and the one place you feel safest becomes the very heart of the nightmare. Just earlier tonight, I was on my way back to my apartment. I reside in a rather affluent neighborhood of a major city on the East Coast. While walking along my street, I saw two women standing before a different apartment building nearby. They were positioned perhaps 20 or 30 feet ahead of me. What was peculiar was how they both abruptly ceased their activity and pivoted to stare right at me the instant I appeared. This struck me as slightly odd. I wondered why they would both just stop and gaze like that, but I dismissed it and continued walking, turning to use the crosswalk to reach my own building. Consequently, my back was turned to them as I crossed the street. Now, while I was in the crosswalk, I realized they had suddenly quickened their pace and were now walking extremely close to me, uncomfortably so. Upon stepping onto the sidewalk, one of them moved right beside me and remarked, "Hey, you're really pretty." She appeared quite young, somewhere between 18 and 20. I responded politely, "Oh, thanks, you too," and attempted to continue on my way. But then the situation turned bizarre. Her demeanor changed completely. Her facial expression and body language shifted in a moment. She adopted an ominous dark look, and her voice lowered as she said, "You have a beautiful aura, but someone wants to hold you back." The rapid switch from affable to creepy caught me entirely off guard. I simply stated, "Sorry, but I'm not interested," and kept walking. She appeared very offended and hurt, as if trying to induce guilt in me for rejecting her. By this time, we were practically at my building's entrance, only a few steps away. It was then I saw them accelerate again, as if they were attempting to get in front of me and reach the door first. I immediately understood their intention, so instead of heading toward them, I swiftly altered my path and went around to use our back patio entrance. After getting inside through the rear, I peeked through a window overlooking the main lobby. I could see both women there, conversing with the concierge at the front desk. The one who had been speaking to me pointed her companion towards the elevator lobby, and that woman hurried off in that direction. The other one remained behind in the main lobby, just standing there and waiting near the concierge's desk. I absolutely had to enter the main lobby to retrieve a food delivery. Therefore, I had no alternative but to pass through. The second woman certainly saw me as I walked past with my food, but I decided against taking the predictable path. Instead of using the normal route to the elevators where her friend was waiting, I took a rear hallway that I knew of. I was able to get on an elevator that opened only from its backside, meaning they were unable to see me board it. Now I am fairly certain the other woman was waiting in that elevator lobby, trying to persuade residents to let her ride upstairs with them. Perhaps she was attempting to access a specific targeted apartment, or maybe she intended to roam the hallways, scouting different units to burglarize later. I am not completely sure, but the situation felt deeply wrong. This building and the surrounding ones are quite upscale and costly, making them attractive targets for criminals. Thankfully, I did not encounter her on my floor when I arrived, and I made it inside my apartment and securely locked the door. My initial apartment experience was in a dilapidated old cottage located in Billings, Montana. This unit was situated behind the main house, which was also a rental property. The main house was occupied by a Mexican family who were somewhat peculiar. One evening they vanished without a word to anyone. Our landlord, a man around 70 years old, proposed a deal to my roommate and me. If we cleaned out their abandoned house, he would waive 2 months of our rent. We accepted, and during the cleanout, we discovered their involvement in Santeria. They had established a disturbing altar down in the basement, and adjacent to it stood a large, circular table. This table was marked with a painted or carved pentagram and featured 4 leather straps bolted to its sides. It was incredibly strange. However, they had also abandoned some valuable items. We found a high-quality set of Pioneer stereo speakers, clearly expensive, and an 825 Holly carburetor that looked almost unused. My roommate and I exchanged a look and mutually agreed to keep these valuable finds. We carried the speakers and the carburetor upstairs to our place. Everything else, the altar, that ominous table, and all the residual junk, we hauled out to the alley for the sanitation crews. I returned from work earlier than my roommate that evening. As I approached our cottage, I noticed all the lights were off, which was unusual. I could hear a loud banging sound from within, as if someone were striking the walls. I hurried inside and switched on the lights to investigate. The noise was originating from Adam's room, which was where we had stored all the items from the other house. I opened his door and was stunned by the sight. His room was adorned with posters, yet every single one was hanging bizarrely. They were all partially torn from the wall, held up only by their bottom 2 tacks. An evil, furious presence was palpable in the room. It terrified me so profoundly that I slammed his door shut with all my might. I retreated to the living room, cranked up the stereo to its maximum volume to drown out the banging, which continued intermittently. I also turned on the television for a sense of companionship, despite knowing that after 11 p.m., back then, the only thing on was screen static. When Adam finally arrived home around 1 a.m., his first words were, "Why is everything turned up so loud?" Just as I began to explain, the banging resumed, more forceful than before. The sound was so intense that we both froze in place. Adam then strode over and opened his bedroom door. The moment he did, I saw his expression shift. He sensed it as well, that same malevolent energy I had encountered earlier. He didn't have to ask if I had meddled with his posters. He simply understood something was deeply wrong in there. Adam is courageous, so he entered his room and began shouting at whatever entity was present to cease its activity. Exactly then, the door slammed shut behind him with such force, it was as if someone had kicked it. I heard him yelling inside, and then he burst back out. We both sat in the living room, too petrified to sleep. We remained awake, watching the static on the TV and listening to the sporadic banging until approximately 6 in the morning, when it finally stopped. The instant the sun rose and silence returned, we gathered all of the items, the speakers, the carburetor, everything we had taken. We transported it all to the alley, doused it with lighter fluid, and set the pile ablaze, watching it burn completely. Later, around 8 a.m., my dad arrived after I called and recounted the night's events. Being a religious man, he walked through our apartment, reciting prayers in each room, paying special attention to Adam's. Adam also contacted his girlfriend to explain the situation. Her father was a medicine man from the Crow tribe, so she procured some sage from him. She came over that morning and performed a smudging ceremony, burning the sage and wafting its smoke through every room to cleanse the space and expel the malevolent entity. After that, things finally felt normal again. But that entire ordeal remains the most frightening paranormal event I have ever experienced in my life. I am a resident of Dublin, Ireland, living in an assisted living facility. It is one of many such establishments across the city. We have a reception desk at the entrance, which is staffed during daytime hours. In the evening, security personnel take over for the overnight shift. I have always been very content living here because it feels protected and secure. I even feel at ease leaving my window open a slight crack for ventilation while I sleep. I never felt any concern about it. Until this past Friday, I was under the genuine impression that once I was within our locked gates for the night, I was utterly safe from any harm. That was the level of security this place seemed to offer me. Now, before I recount the incident, there's another thing to know about me. I have a deep passion for attending concerts and shows. Dublin is home to numerous excellent venues, and I make an effort to go as often as possible. Given that I am blind, the view is of no importance to me. I am unable to see the stage regardless. This allows me to purchase the most inexpensive tickets available, which is fantastic because it means I can go out frequently without significant financial strain. So, last Friday, which was actually the 4th of July, I was returning home from a concert. The time must have been around 10 p.m., or perhaps slightly later. I was in high spirits, likely still feeling the energy from the music. The taxi stopped directly at the main gate, which was locked, as is standard at night. I pressed the intercom button to summon the security guard so he could unlock the side gate for me. While I possess my own key for that gate, the lock is an absolute pain to operate. It is exceptionally stiff and tricky. The key often gets stuck after insertion, or simply will not turn, regardless of how much one jiggles it. Anyway, the guard did not respond after 2 buzzes. I assumed he was likely conducting one of his hourly patrols of the grounds. The taxi driver noticed my predicament and kindly offered his assistance. He proposed to open the side gate for me, relock it securely, and then pass my key back to me through the gate's bars. It sounded like a perfectly good solution, so we proceeded. I had traversed about halfway across the courtyard when the security guard finally appeared. He immediately apologized for his absence when I buzzed, but I held no annoyance towards him. I recognized he was merely performing his duties. I assured him it was perfectly fine, that no harm was done. He has always been a great help. He then escorted me the remainder of the way across the courtyard. Cars are typically parked throughout that area, so he skillfully guided me around them. I was certainly grateful for that, as I cannot see their positions. He then led me inside our building. We walked straight ahead through reception, past the front desk, and then made a right toward the double doors, the ones leading to the main corridor. My apartment is located just down that hall, not far at all. I travel this route daily, so I am intimately familiar with it. Everything felt entirely normal. I was behind locked gates with security cameras monitoring the property. Nothing bad could ever happen once you are inside. Correct. That was my steadfast belief. So I located my apartment door, inserted my key, and opened it. I stepped inside, and as I do every single time I arrive home, I immediately turned to close and lock the front door behind me. It is a completely automatic habit now, but this time, something was amiss. The door felt unusually rigid as I tried to push it shut. It wasn't moving as it should. This should have been the first sign that something was terribly wrong. My initial thought was innocent enough. I needed to submit a maintenance request tomorrow, or maybe Monday, it being the weekend. Something was obviously wrong with my door, but in that moment, I was focused on getting it closed and locked, no matter what. Yet the harder I pushed to close it, the more it seemed to resist me. It felt as if the door possessed its own will, pushing back with increasing force. And then the horrible, sickening realization struck me, and my stomach plunged. Someone was on the other side of my door. Someone was out in the hallway, actively preventing me from shutting and locking my door. They were pushing against me, attempting to force entry. The terror that coursed through me then is impossible to describe adequately. I was utterly petrified. My thoughts are raced with dreadful possibilities of what this individual might do if they succeeded. I threw my entire body weight against the door and pushed with all my might. I am not a strong person by any means, but sheer adrenaline fueled me then. Whoever was on the other side was pushing back with equal, if not greater, force. We were locked in a terrifying struggle, both fighting for control of my door. That is when I truly began to panic. Without thinking, I yelled out loudly, "Hey, what do you want?" The moment I shouted, everything changed. I heard and felt the door suddenly yield and close. The instant it shut, my hands were fumbling for the lock. Then I just stood there, braced against the wall, struggling to breathe and comprehend what had just transpired. Did somebody actually just try to force their way into my home? So many questions swirled in my mind. How did I not hear them trailing me down the corridor? I surely would have noticed footsteps. Should I report this to security right away? But then a new thought surfaced. What if it was the security guard himself who had tried to get in? What if he then alters the camera recordings to erase his actions? And wait, are there even any cameras in my hallway? I honestly do not know. If there are no cameras there, would anyone even believe my account? It would simply be my word against whoever was responsible. I was so disoriented and scared that I went to bed without reporting it. I hoped for more clarity in the morning, but Saturday arrived, and I could not stop thinking about it. The more I replayed the event in my head, the more frightened I became. Every tiny detail haunted me. By Saturday afternoon, I knew I needed to tell someone, so I sent a very long voice message to my key worker on WhatsApp. I described everything that occurred on Friday night in detail, from the taxi drop-off to the terrifying struggle with my door. I just had to let someone know what I endured, but I was aware she would not receive it until Monday, as she does not work on weekends. None of the key workers do, but at least I had officially reported it. It was documented. On Sunday, I actually attended another concert. I nearly skipped it, being still so rattled, but my love for music is too strong to let fear completely dictate my life. Thankfully, and I mean thankfully, nothing occurred that night. It was entirely uneventful. Upon my return home, I was able to open and shut my front door with no issue whatsoever. Monday passed without any news, as my key worker was unable to access her work phone that day for some reason. Perhaps she was ill or handling emergencies. Who can say? But she finally received my message yesterday, on Tuesday. She replied, saying she would contact me in about an hour, but first she had to speak with the building manager regarding what I told her. I could sense from her message that she was taking this very seriously, which was a relief. About an hour later, my key worker responded. She wanted to schedule a meeting with the three of us, herself, me, and the building manager. What the building manager disclosed in that meeting made me shudder. They had reviewed the camera footage from Friday night. The cameras showed the security guard walking in the exact opposite direction of where I had gone. He was proceeding to complete his patrol, just as I had assumed, so it was not him, which provided some measure of relief. But this is the detail that made my blood run cold. Someone else had, in fact, been following me down my hallway. The cameras captured the whole thing. I was not imagining it. I was not being paranoid. Someone had followed me to my door and tried to force their way into my home. The camera's angle could not fully capture the struggle at my door. That part was unfortunately obscured, but you could plainly see this person fleeing down the corridor right after I shouted. They bolted the second I made a sound. The building manager explained that due to GDPR, those data protection regulations, the staff are not permitted to reveal the identity of the person who tried to break into my apartment. Yet, I found that quite frustrating. I wanted to know who did this, but they promised me they have already notified the police. They also attempted to comfort me by suggesting that this individual was most likely just after money or valuables. I guess they were trying to calm my fears. But truly, Do their motives really matter? Someone still stalked me to my door and tried to force their way inside. That is horrifying, regardless of their intent. I am, however, absolutely determined to press charges. I made that very clear. I do not want this to happen again, not to me or to any other resident in our complex. People deserve to feel safe in their homes. The building manager also presented me with an option, which I greatly appreciated. From this point forward, a security guard can escort me directly to my apartment door each and every time I come back from my concerts or shows. I eagerly accepted that offer. There was no hesitation at all. I am done taking chances. So, to the individual who attempted to force their way into my apartment that night, unfortunately for the both of us, we will likely have to meet again. At some stage, I will probably have to identify you or give testimony or whatever else the police require of me. But I sincerely hope that when that meeting occurs, you will be in handcuffs. And so, those stories come to an end, leaving a few questions to haunt you. What is more terrifying? A visible threat trying to get in, or an unseen one that may have been inside your home all along? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. We read all of them. See you in the next one.